I don't remember the first words we exchanged. Not exactly. What I do remember is the pause between them, the kind of pause that lingers too long, that makes you wonder if you're standing too close, if your eyes gave away too much. She wasn't the kind of woman you forgot. Mid-40s, with the kind of poise that didn't need effort. There was something about the way she carried herself, like she had lived through enough storms to know when to keep her umbrella closed. And then there was me. Younger, quieter. Trying to say less so I wouldn't reveal how much I was watching her. The way her hand hovered over a glass, the way her hair slipped loose near her cheek. I told myself not to stare, but I did anyway. The room was too still. That kind of silence where the ticking clock sounded louder than it should. She leaned back against the edge of the table, crossing her arms, though not tightly, like she was trying to hold something in, not keep me out. "You're quiet tonight," she said. Her voice wasn't accusing, just noticing. I shrugged, eyes darting to the floor, then back to her. "Just listening." "To what?" I didn't answer right away. The way she looked at me, it wasn't impatient, it was patient in a way that made my chest tighten. She wanted an answer, but more than that, she wanted me to try. "To you," I finally said. "Even when you don't say anything." A smile tugged at her lips, but it wasn't the kind you throw around easily. It was smaller, more private. She tilted her head, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "That's dangerous, you know. Hearing what people don't say." I should have laughed. I should have let her words slip away. But instead I found myself stepping closer. Not enough to touch, but enough that I could feel the heat from her arm, the faint trace of perfume that reminded me of cedar and something warmer. Her hand moved slightly, brushing against the table's edge, then against mine, by accident, maybe. Maybe not. I didn't pull away. She didn't either. The silence returned, heavier this time, but not empty. It pressed around us, thick with everything we weren't naming. I could see the faintest crease near her brow, the one that deepened when she was lost in thought. She caught me looking and arched a brow, as though daring me to admit it. My throat felt dry. "Why are you looking at me like that?" she asked softly. I didn't have the right words, so I let the silence stretch. My pulse was loud in my ears. When I finally spoke, my voice was lower than I meant it to be. "Because you're here." It sounded foolish the moment it left my mouth, but she didn't laugh. Instead, she studied me, the way someone might study a fragile object before deciding whether to hold it or leave it where it was. Then, without warning, she reached past me, fingers brushing my wrist, and tugged the curtain closed with one hand. The room dimmed, shadows slipping across her face. She was close enough now that I could see the faint tremor in her fingers. Close enough that my breath caught when her shoulder nearly brushed mine. "I trust you," she whispered, more to the space between us than to me. And then she smiled, soft, unfinished, as though she wasn't sure she should. I leaned in, not touching, not daring. The air was thick, the moment breaking open, and that's when the door behind us clicked open. The door opened, and we both turned too quickly, like children caught where they shouldn't be. But it was nothing, just a draft, a misaligned hinge, maybe the building settling into its own bones. Still, she stepped back, just enough to remind me of the space between us. Her fingers brushed down her skirt, smoothing fabric that didn't need smoothing. A tiny gesture, but I felt the absence of her closeness like the echo of a bell. I cleared my throat. "Guess the house doesn't like secrets." She gave me a look then, a flicker of amusement shadowed by something heavier. "Secrets have a way of getting out," she murmured. Her voice caught at the edge of weariness, and I wondered how many secrets she carried, how many nights she had closed curtains like this, not for someone else, but to keep the world from watching her be alone. I knew bits and pieces. A marriage that ended quietly, papers signed in the same silence they had lived in for years. A son nearly my age, away in another city, calling more out of duty than desire. I didn't ask about it now. I just let her words hang, filling the space with a weight that made my chest ache. "You think too much," she said finally, almost teasing, though her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "I watch," I admitted. "That's all." "And what do you see?" I swallowed hard. Her nearness was undoing me again, her hand resting lightly on the back of a chair, her shoulder leaning just enough in my direction that I caught the warmth of her body heat. "I see someone who pretends she's fine," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. The silence that followed was sharp, almost punishing. She tilted her head, eyes narrowing slightly, not in anger, but in recognition. "You're too young to talk like that," she whispered. I smiled faintly, even though my palms were damp. "Or maybe you're too used to people not noticing." She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped closer again, as if testing the truth of my words, her perfume brushing against me like a question. Her hand lifted, almost without thought, and settled briefly on my shoulder. It wasn't a lover's touch, not yet. It was the kind of touch that says, "Don't move, let me see if I can stand this." I held still. Her thumb pressed lightly into the fabric of my shirt, and for a second it seemed she might draw me nearer. But then her hand fell away, leaving behind a phantom weight. "People would talk," she said softly, turning toward the window again. "People always do." She exhaled, a faint laugh tangled in the sound, but her eyes glistened as though I had touched something raw. When she turned back, she didn't step away this time. She just stood there, looking at me too long, until the air between us was charged and thin. Her fingers brushed mine, only for an instant, but enough to anchor us both. Either of us spoke. We didn't need to. The silence itself was the bond. We hadn't moved apart since her fingers brushed mine. The silence between us wasn't empty anymore, it pulsed. Her eyes flicked to my lips for the briefest second, then away. My chest tightened. I thought, this is it. But then her phone buzzed on the table. The sound cracked the air in two. She startled slightly, like she'd forgotten the world still existed. Her hand slipped from mine, and she turned too quickly, fumbling for the device. A message lit up the screen. I caught a glimpse of a name, her sister. She didn't open it, didn't need to. The way her jaw tightened was enough. She let the phone face down against the wood. Her fingers lingered there, pressed flat, steadying herself. I swallowed, my pulse drumming in my throat. "You don't have to answer?" "Not now," she said. Quiet. Too quick. The room felt smaller, like the walls had edged closer while we weren't watching. She leaned against the table, her hand inches from mine again. That nearness made my skin hum. My heart beat in short, uneven bursts. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "Do you want me to go?" Her silence stretched, her lips parting but no words coming. Her eyes darted toward me, then away. Her breathing was quicker now, shallow. I stepped closer. Just a fraction. The air between us thinned. She didn't move back. Her shoulder brushed mine. Accidental, but she didn't shift away. Her perfume was warm, threaded with something sharper now, like citrus at the edge of sweetness. "I'm too old for this," she said, half to herself, half to me. "For what?" Her gaze locked with mine. No smile, no teasing. Just raw, exposed truths she didn't want to name. I leaned in before I could stop myself, so close that her breath brushed against my cheek. My lips parted. Hers did too. And then, the door creaked open. We both jumped back, but not far enough. A friend's voice carried from the hallway. "You in here?" Her body stiffened. She grabbed a book from the table, clutching it to her chest as though that had been her purpose all along. I turned, pretending to study the shelves. My throat burned. "Yeah," she called, her voice steady but her hands trembling slightly against the book's spine. "Just finishing something." Footsteps retreated. The door closed again. The silence that followed was unbearable. She set the book down. Her eyes found mine. We both laughed, soft, nervous, the sound breaking the pressure for just a heartbeat. But then it returned. We stood closer than before, almost pressed together by the weight of what we hadn't done. Her hand brushed my arm, so light, it could have been accidental. But she left it there, her fingers curling slightly against my sleeve. "Tell me," she whispered. "Tell me you'll walk away." I couldn't answer. And neither did she. Instead, we stayed, closer than ever, not touching enough, unable to move. Her hand was still on my arm when I realized she was shaking. Not much, just the faintest tremor that betrayed what her steady voice couldn't. "I can't," she whispered, but her fingers curled tighter, pulling me closer even as the words denied it. I leaned in, my breath brushing against her hair. "Then tell me to stop." Her silence was louder than anything she could have said. Her head tilted slightly toward me, almost unconsciously, her temple so close I could feel the warmth radiating off her skin. I raised a hand, hesitating in the charged air, then finally let my fingers graze along her cheek. Soft, tentative, like testing whether the world would end if I touched her. She closed her eyes at the contact, exhaling a sound that was somewhere between relief and surrender. "You don't know what this would cost," she murmured. "Then let me decide what it's worth." Her eyes snapped open at that, wide, glistening. I thought she might push me away. Instead, she reached up, caught my wrist, and held my hand against her cheek. The world narrowed. Just her breath, her skin, the thud of my own heartbeat too loud in my ears. Her lips parted as though to speak, but nothing came. She just looked at me, like she was memorizing the shape of my face, the lines of me she wasn't supposed to trace. Then, almost desperately, she whispered, "Do you know how many nights I've wanted?" She cut herself off, biting her lip. "Say it," I breathed, my voice rough, lower than I'd ever heard it. Her hands pressed against my chest now, not pushing, not pulling, just resting there, caught between distance and surrender. I bent closer, my forehead nearly brushing hers. The room was heavy with it, the pull, the risk, the unbearable temptation. She laughed then, but it was sharp, strangled. "God, you're so young! What am I doing?" "Looking at me," I said. "Like you don't want to stop." Her laugh broke, softer this time, trembling. She leaned forward, pressing her forehead against my collarbone, hiding her face as if that might erase the truth. My arms hovered, unsure if I was allowed to hold her. Finally, she lifted her head, eyes fierce and wet. "If this happens, I can't take it back. Neither can I." We were nose to nose now. My hand slid to the back of her neck, fingers threading through her hair. Her lips hovered a breath away from mine, her body taut, trembling, pressed against me but not yielding. Her eyes flicked once more to my mouth. "Tell me no," I whispered. She didn't. She only closed her eyes, and then the sharp sound of a knock rattled the door. We froze. Her eyes flew open, wide, startled, but her hand clung harder to mine as if letting go would undo everything we had just dared to feel. The knock froze us, but no one entered. Just the echo, fading into silence. We stayed still for too long. My hand still cradled the back of her neck. Her fingers were still pressed into my chest. Finally, she pulled back, her breath shallow, her lips inches from mine. "It's not safe," she whispered. "For who?" "For either of us." She stepped away, smoothing her blouse with trembling hands, turning her back to me. But distance didn't calm the air, it only sharpened it. Her phone buzzed again. This time she picked it up. I watched her face shift, her jaw tightening as she read. "What is it?" I asked. She hesitated. "Too long." "It's nothing," she said finally, setting it down. But I knew the cadence of a lie when I heard one. My stomach nodded. You're hiding something. Her shoulders rose and fell, a breath she didn't release. Then she turned, her eyes meeting mine, raw and unflinching. My sister knows. She's been asking questions. The room tilted. Heat rushed through me, part fear, part something sharper. Knows about us. There isn't even in us, she said quickly, too quickly. But her hands betrayed her, twisting together, fingers fidgeting like she couldn't bear her own denial. I stepped closer, slow, deliberate. Then why does it scare you so much? She backed into the table, hands flat against its edge as though steadying herself. I caged her there without touching, close enough that her breath stuttered against mine. Because it's wrong, she whispered. Because I'm supposed to know better. Because they'll say I'm desperate, pathetic. Stop. My voice cracked, low, desperate. I pressed a hand against the table beside hers, close enough that our fingers brushed. Is that what you think? Or just what they'll say? Her lips trembled, but no words came. Instead, she turned her face slightly, as though hiding, and in that movement her hair brushed my cheek. The touch undid me. I reached up, gently, and tucked the strand behind her ear. My fingers lingered, grazing the line of her jaw. She closed her eyes, leaning, just slightly, into my hand. This isn't safe, she repeated, but the words were softer now, dissolving into the warmth of the space between us. Maybe safe isn't what we want, I breathed, leaning closer until my lips hovered just above hers, not touching, trembling with restraint. Her hands gripped the edge of the table harder, knuckles white. Then, suddenly, one of them let go, rose, hesitated, and landed against my chest again, flat, steady, right over my heart. I thought she might push me back. She didn't. She stayed there, feeling the uneven hammer of my pulse. Her eyes opened, fierce and wet. If we do this, everything changes. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Then let it change, I whispered. She shuddered, her breath breaking against mine, and for the first time, she didn't step away. Her hand pressed against my chest, steady, unyielding. I couldn't tell if she was holding me back or holding herself upright. Her lips hovered a breath from mine, parted but frozen. Every second stretched, unbearable. Say it, I whispered. My voice was low, torn between pleading and daring. Her eyes searched mine, frantic, as though the answer might save her. Or damn her. I can't, she began, but the word broke apart as her body trembled. I covered her hand with mine, pressing it harder to my chest, letting her feel the erratic hammer of my pulse. Then let me. For a moment, neither of us breathed. The world shrank to the heat of her palm, the shallow rise and fall of her chest against mine, the faintest tremor of her lip as if she were already kissing me in her mind. And then she broke. Her forehead leaned into mine, almost violent in its surrender, as if she had given up the fight against herself. My hand cupped her jaw, thumb grazing the corner of her mouth. Her breath hitched, hot, sharp, as she let her body rest against mine. This is madness, she whispered, the words brushing my lips. Then let it be, I breathed. And finally, her mouth found mine. It wasn't gentle, not at first. It was desperate, clumsy, like all the silence and restraint had snapped in a single rush. My hands slid into her hair, hers clawed at my shirt, pulling me closer, closer, as though we'd waited too long and couldn't risk another second. But even in the urgency, there was hesitation, moments where her lips slowed, trembling, as if the guilt was threading through the heat. Where she pulled back a fraction, only to lean in again with something fiercer. We kissed like two people drowning, not sure if air would ever return. When we finally tore apart, we didn't step away. Our foreheads stayed pressed, our breaths ragged, mingling in the thick silence. Her hands slid down my arms, resting against my wrists, holding me there, not pushing, not pulling, just keeping me. Her eyes met mine, glassy, fierce. We can't go back now. I don't want to. Her laugh broke shaky, half a sob. She shook her head, burying her face briefly against my neck as though hiding from her own decision. When she looked up again, there was no hesitation. Just raw clarity. I've been alone for too long, she confessed softly. And you make me forget that. I brushed a thumb over her cheek, memorizing every line of her face. Then don't forget. Not tonight. The air between us settled, not lighter, not safer, but certain. For the first time, we weren't pretending anymore. We knew what we had done, what we couldn't undo. And yet neither of us moved away. The kiss left us trembling, pressed too close, hearts thundering as though we had run miles without moving an inch. When we pulled apart, either of us let go. My hand still framed her face. Her palms still rested flat against my chest, as if she needed proof that I was real. For a long while, we just breathed. Nothing else. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was thick, yes, but softer, like the kind that comes after a storm when the air is still damp, still raw, but alive again. Her eyes flicked away, then back, nervous, searching. You'll regret this, she whispered, but her voice shook with doubt even as she said it. I smiled faintly, pressing my forehead against hers. If I do, it won't be because of you. Her lips curved, small and fragile, but genuine. And then she leaned forward, not for another kiss, but to rest her forehead against my shoulder, her body sinking into mine. The surrender was quieter this time, almost tender. I wrapped my arms around her, pulling her in. She let me, her head nestling beneath my chin, her breath warm against my neck. The hug lasted longer than either of us expected. Maybe longer than either of us had let anyone hold us in years. I hate the way they'll talk, she admitted softly. The way they'll see me. Too old, too foolish. I shook my head, my hand stroking slowly down her back. They don't see you. Not like I do. Her fingers tightened in my shirt. A pause. Then she whispered, How do you see me? I pulled back just enough to meet her eyes, close enough to still feel her breath. As someone I can't walk away from. Her lips trembled again, but she didn't argue. Instead, she laced her fingers through mine, carefully, deliberately, like sealing a pact she couldn't unmake. The curtain was still drawn tight, the room dim and private, but for the first time it didn't feel like hiding. It felt like choosing. We didn't speak much after that. Words weren't needed. She sat beside me on the couch, her shoulder pressed against mine, our hands intertwined and resting between us. Every so often she would glance at me, as though surprised I was still there, and I'd squeeze her hand gently to remind her I wasn't going anywhere. The doubts hadn't disappeared. The world outside would still have questions, whispers, judgments. But here, in this quiet room, we'd found something neither of us wanted to lose. She smiled then, small and certain, and leaned in just enough to brush her lips against my forehead. The kind of kiss that didn't ask for more, but promised everything. And I knew, without needing to say it, this was only the beginning. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?